Hey, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back to the Daily Creative Challenge number 4. I'm Jesús Ramirez. How are you guys doing this weekend? A lot of familiar faces as usual. Kata Jones. You know what? If I don't see her name on there, I'm going to be worried and I'm going to need to call the authorities and make sure she's okay because I've seen her every single time I've been on this stream. So thank you so much, Kata, for the support. Claudia, Mark, Paul, Baldair, thank you so much for being here. So this is the Daily Creative Challenge number 4. We've been working with Photoshop, of course. We've created a comic book effect from a photo. We created an album cover, and yesterday we started working on a movie poster using the double exposure effect. And today we're going to finish that up by adding text to that movie poster and using layer styles to style it. If you're not caught up with these streams, you can go back and rewatch the old streams so that you can work on those projects. Even if you haven't watched yesterday's project, the movie poster project, you can still follow along today. We're just going to use the image that we created as a background, and we're going to overlay text in front of that. So if you're not caught up, you can just open up a new document and just work with a blank canvas and just apply the layer styles that you see on screen. Before we get started, I do want to show you a couple things. Number one is make sure that you go into behance.net daily creative challenges and click on that big blue button so that you get notified on the Adobe Creative app whenever there's a new daily creative challenge. Also, make sure that you tune in next week at 11:30 a.m. Pacific. We'll be continuing with 5 more daily creative challenges. Also, make sure that you upload the work onto Behance. Anything that you create with us, upload it onto Behance, and make sure that you use the tag PS Daily Challenge. PS in capital letters, Daily Challenge in lowercase letters. And the reason that you want to do that is so that when we search for that tag, we can see the work that we've done. So this is some of the work that people have been working on as we've been doing the challenge. You can see the album covers, some double exposure effects, and if I scroll down far enough, I'll see some comic book from a photo effects. So there's a lot of great work. So thank you so much for submitting that to us. So remember, go into Behance and use the tag PS Daily Challenge, PS in capital letters. So the last challenge will be May 10th, but you can submit your challenges by May 13th. So that is the final, that's the deadline for submitting the challenges. So keep that in mind. Another very important thing to remember is that we have a community on Discord. You can just click on this button to join the community on Discord. And what that is this here. It's a community where myself, the Adobe team, and you guys could give feedback. You guys can ask questions. It's just a wonderful place to communicate with artists just like you. One of the important ones is the design feedback channel, this one here. And you can see how people are submitting their work, and myself and other people are giving advice, answering questions. So I highly recommend you join the Discord community so that we can all stay in touch. As I said before, today we're going to be working off the project that we started yesterday. So this is the double exposure effect that I created. The only difference from what you're looking at now and from what I finished yesterday is that I chose a different gradient. I think I had a blue one selected when the stream ended, but I just went into photographic toning and I just selected a different one. I think the one that I had before was blue like this one here, but I just chose a different gradient. So you can watch that video and follow along so you can get to this point. But like I said, you don't have to watch that video to get started with this one. You can just follow along with a blank canvas and just use the type tool, and we're gonna create some text. So before we get started, I want to ask you guys a question. What should I name this movie? Give me maybe like a 1-word title, maybe 2 words that are not very long so that I could fit it in here. And I'm really curious to know what your ideas for a movie title is. So I'm just gonna wait a couple seconds here and see suggestions come up on the feed. So I'm guessing "so cool" is not the movie title. I think we're just delayed a little bit, so I'm gonna give it a few more seconds. While I wait for you guys to come up with movie titles, one thing that I highly recommend is that if you're using the Adobe Creative Cloud, is to go on to the Adobe Fonts website so that you can download some fonts. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. I'm starting to see some names come up. Toothy, Sunlight, Cityscape. I kind of like Toothy. City Jack, Lights, City Boy, Custom Text. That's a good one. Sunshine Boy, Summer City, Dude Happy, A True Reflection. Those are pretty good ones. A Day in the City, Sky, Urban Nerd, City Life, City Smile. I kind of like City Smile because it's a city and the guy smiling, so let's go with that, City Smile. So thank you for the suggestions. I'm gonna go with City Smile, but oh man, Urban Nerd, bunch of good ones. But anyway, so what you wanna do is just click on the type tool, the horizontal type tool, and just select any font that you wanna use. Now, I do wanna mention that if you're a member of the Creative Cloud, you do have access to what was formerly known as Adobe Typekit. It is now called Adobe Fonts. And what that is a website where you can download fonts. And here it is, it's at fonts.adobe.com. And you can just find the font that you like and license it. You can just, or not license it, activate it. It's the actual definition. So you can just click on this icon to activate the fonts. And there's ways of searching for fonts, and I highly recommend using it. Now, I know that a lot of you use free font resources, and that's totally okay to use free font resources if you're doing personal work or you're just practicing. But if you're doing work for a client or professional work, it's not always a good idea to use free fonts because you never really know the licensing behind it. A font, much like a design that you might create or a photo that you take, it's intellectual property, so you gotta make sure that you have the proper commercial rights to use the font. So anything that you download with fonts.adobe.com already is clear for personal and commercial use, so you can legally use it. So that's the big advantage. So if you design a logo and you use one of these fonts, you're not gonna run into any legal problems later. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I recommend fonts.adobe.com. But again, if you're just practicing and doing things for fun, it's okay to download something from one of the free font resources online. So what I'm gonna do now is go back into Photoshop, and I'm going to create, I'm gonna select the horizontal type tool, and I'm going to type, and I think the name was City Smiles. Is that what it was? I think I forgot already. So we'll just say that it was City Smile or Smiles. We'll say City Smiles. And I'm just going to click on the Move tool, and I can click on the corner handles now to make the text larger. If you want to center the text to a canvas, here's a quick trick. I'm just gonna place this off to the side. If you press Control A, Command A on the Mac, it's going to make a selection around the entire canvas. Do you see the marching ants just going around the entire canvas? Now that I have that marching ants around the entire canvas, I can make sure that the Move tool is selected, and in the options bar, I can click on these align buttons. I can click on this button to align it to the center, and if I wanted it dead in the center, I can also click on this icon here. But in this case, I don't really want that, so I'm just gonna move it down. Before I move it down, I'm going to press Control D, Command D on the Mac to deselect so that I don't have any marching ants, and I can just move it down like so, and I can place it right about here. So that's going to be the text that I'm going to use. Now, I need to select a different font. This is not looking the way that I wanted. I just want something a little more interesting. So I'm going to go into the type tool once again, click on the drop down, and I can scroll to the different list of fonts, and you can see the preview of how that's changing down here. And let me zoom in and move it to the side so that we can get a better view of that. So I can just come down and see what that looks like. If you want to look at the Adobe Typekit or fonts.adobe.com fonts in Photoshop and nothing else, you can click on this icon, this TK icon, and you'll see nothing but the Adobe Typekit fonts that you have installed in your Creative Cloud. The font that I'm going to use is Adobe Caslon Pro, this one here. And I'm going to now apply layer styles to this text layer. Layer styles allow me to apply effects to a layer. I can add shadows, highlights, bevels, all kinds of different things just to give the text some style and just make it look much, much better than just a flat color. So what you want to do is double click to the side of the layer to bring up the layer style window, and I can just start adding a whole bunch of different styles to this. What I'm going to do is click on the FX icon and just reset the default to list so that I'm looking at the default list. And I'm going to start by adding a bevel and emboss, and I'll reset it to default so that we're all looking at the same thing. And so that you can see what I'm actually doing, I'm also going to add a color overlay, and I'm just going to select this color here. And the color is really not that important. You can select any color that you like, but that's the color that I'm going to go for. And I'm going to go back into the bevel and emboss, and now we can adjust the size, and you can see how I'm adjusting how that bevel works. And there's different settings. You can select an emboss, pillow emboss, and stroke emboss. What I'm going to select in this case is the pillow emboss, and I'm just going to increase it. Actually, sorry about that, not the pillow emboss. I'm going to select the inner bevel and then change the technique to chisel hard and then increase the size. And see what that does there? I'm just going to press OK, and I'm going to zoom in even more so that you can see what that's looking like. So it's creating this really cool chiseled 3D effect. Really, really easy just by using those settings and adjusting the slider. Let me double click to the side of the layer to bring that up, and I can continue working with the bevel. See that? See how I'm just increasing the bevel and it gives that effect there? I can also adjust the opacity of the shadows. See that? And the highlights as well. And I'm actually going to change the blending mode to overlay so that I can get some highlights that are not completely white. They're sort of yellow, and that I think that looks a little bit better. Also, you can adjust the contour, and you have all these different settings, and it makes the text look more metallic. You can select the one that best looks in your opinion, or you can just create your own. You can just select the default one, double click on the contour, it brings up this curved window, and you can adjust it accordingly. And you can just click and drag to create points and create like a really, really cool looking gold metal effect just by dragging those points around. We'll call that good for now, and we're gonna apply a few more settings. I'm going to apply a drop shadow. If I click on the drop shadow icon, I'm going to click on reset to default just to get the default settings. And then I can click and drag. Notice that as I'm clicking and dragging, I'm also adjusting the lighting of the image. So the light is coming from the right, so the shadow will be on the left. So I can control all those different settings together because I'm using something called the global light. This checkbox here, that means global light. So that controls the entire light of the scene. Looks pretty cool, right? If you want to only control the shadow and not the actual light of the scene, you can uncheck use global light, and then you can simply control the shadow without controlling anything else. See that? And I can just adjust the size of the shadow, maybe the distance, put it further away, closer. It's really up to you. I like adding just a little tiny bit of noise in shadows just so they're not completely smooth, and I think it just looks a little bit better. Another thing that you can do is add textures to the bevel. So if I click on texture, you can select any number of different textures that come built in Photoshop. For example, this cloud one looks pretty good in this case, and I can adjust the scale and the depth of the texture that I apply. The texture is up to you. You don't have to use one if you don't want to. I'm just showing you that option so that you can use it for your movie poster if you think it's relevant. I just saw a comment that said, "What is that banana?" That's on the tools bar here. And I'll show you guys, if you guys remind me, I'll show you how to add it. But let me just finish this text effect. But anyway, I'll just add just a tiny little bit of depth to my texture there, and I can just press OK. I can double click on the hand tool to fit the image to screen, and that's the text there. I'm gonna make it just a little larger because I think I can just go bigger with that. And another thing that you can do is when you have a text layer like this one, you can actually duplicate the layer and then start stacking other text layers on top of that. The same text, but different styles. And let me show you what I mean by that. With this City Smiles layer selected, I can press Ctrl J, Command J on the Mac to duplicate that layer, or you can just right click and select duplicate layer. So then you have to remove the layer styles. So you can right click and select clear layer styles. So no more layer styles. What you want to do now is reduce the fill, not the opacity, the fill to 0. So the fill's here and reduce it to 0. That's going to make it disappear. But when we apply a layer style, the pixels that will show in this layer will only be the pixels created by the layer style. So if I double click on the layer and create a layer style, I can add a stroke to the image. See that stroke there is basically the same color that I used for the text. And I can also add a bevel and emboss, but not to the entire layer. I can just add a bevel and emboss to that stroke. So I can go into the style and select stroke emboss, and it creates an emboss on that stroke. And actually, let me reset this to default, and I'll select stroke emboss once again. And if I increase the size, you can see how that's adjusting the edge of the image. I can also, of course, adjust the contour to find one that looks better with this image. Maybe this one there. And I can adjust the highlights and the shadows as well. And the size and depth is totally up to you. But the important thing to note is that I'm just controlling the stroke. I'm controlling the bevel, but it's only being applied to the stroke based on the style that I chose. So that's what I mean. You can keep stacking layers on top of each other. So another thing that you can do, for example, is add a gradient overlay. And I'm just gonna go back into my original gradients. So I'm just going to reset my gradients, and I can go from this one that's black to transparent, and maybe I can just have like a black highlight here, maybe change the blending mode to overlay, and it creates that effect there. So I'm just affecting the bottom part of the text. So you can keep stacking layers on top of each other, applying different effects so that you build just a more complex text layer with layer styles. So that's what I added in this layer, and I could add as many more as I want to on top of that just to build that effect. So what I'm gonna do now is simply put these two layers into one group. So I can hold Shift, click on the bottom layer so it selects both, Control G, Command G on the Mac to put it into a group, and then I'm just going to title this layer, this group, and I'll call it title. This is the movie title. So that's all in this group. I can place all the layers that I worked on yesterday into another group, and I'll call this group poster. So once again, to create a group, you press Control G, that's Command G on the Mac. And that's before and after. I can even enhance this a little bit further by adding a gradient adjustment layer, or fill layer rather, and selecting that same black to transparent gradient. And I can scale it down a bit and click and drag and move it down just to make this bottom part just a little darker and reduce the opacity. So that bottom part is just a little bit darker, and this is what that effect looks like. City Smiles. So that's the name of our movie. And when you're done with your movie poster, you can export that into your computer and then upload it into Behance or into the Discord channel. Let me show you how to do that. If you go into File, Export, you can click on Export As, and you can export the file as a PNG or a JPEG. A JPEG is fine in this case, and just click on Export, and then give it a name and save it on your computer. So I'll just call it Final movie. And then you can go into behance.net, click on create a project, and upload your file. So I'm going to upload my final movie poster. There it is. I can click on continue, and then I can select the cover image for the movie poster. I can zoom in or out. I think that looks pretty good. I can give it a title. I'll call it movie poster, and I'll crop and continue. The important thing that you want to do with this is click on discoverability and add the keyword for this challenge. So that's under the behance.net/daily creative challenge page, and is this one right here, PS Daily Creative Challenge, capital S, capital P, capital S, lowercase daily challenge. And I can go back onto Behance under keywords, put that in there, and add a comma at the end to apply that keyword. So that's what you want to do so that we can find it on the final day and look at all the work that you've done. Also, don't forget to submit your image onto the Discord channel under design feedback. You can place your project, and myself, the Adobe team, and other users just like you could give you comments and advice and answer your questions. So check that out. We have just a few more minutes, and as I promised you, I'm going to show you what this banana is. This banana is just an Easter egg that the Photoshop engineers added into Photoshop. You can add it to your keyboard if you like, or to your toolbar, excuse me, not your keyboard, to your toolbar. By default, you usually have 3 dots here. You can click on the 3 dots, select Edit Toolbar, hold the Shift key, and click on Done, and it should add, I don't think I clicked on it, Shift, Done, and it adds a banana. So if you hold Shift and click on Done, it adds a banana. If you want to remove the banana, you go into the banana and hold Alt or Option on the Mac, and then click on Done. So I just want everybody to do that to your friends. If you're at school, when they get up to go to the bathroom, if you're at work, do it to your coworker next to you. Just freak them out when they come back from the bathroom with that banana. And let us know on Monday how that went. So it'll be a good way to start the weekend. If you have any further questions, I'll be at the Discord channel. So once again, you can get there by going into the behance.net Daily Creative Challenge page and scrolling all the way to the bottom and clicking on Join on Discord. And I know that there's a link right above my head right now that'll also get you there. So check it out. I'll be back again on Monday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific. I hope to see everyone here, and we'll be back with a whole nother week of Photoshop Daily Creative Challenges. Thank you so much. My name is Jesús Ramirez, and I will see you guys again next week. Thank you so much.